Hello, Anna Navarro.
Hello, Brian.
How are you today?
Running on fumes.
Running on fumes. All right. Well, what I love about Anna Navarro podcast is I don't have to do much because you're fired up as always. You were very vocal this week, standing up for the Venezuelan community as Trump administration continues to escalate the legal battle over alleged gang member deportations. How do you think this is going to play out?
Well, look, I think Donald Trump is going to lose this in the courts, but I'm not sure it matters because I'm not sure he doesn't wipe his butt with the court orders, and I don't know what mechanism the courts have to enforce things when he's got an accomplice like Pam Bondi at DOJ, when he's got people like Kash Patel at FBI. Who's going to order the court martial? Who's going to order the U.S. Marshals to go grab the Venezuelans? Who's going to order the U.S. Marshals to stop the planes or the FAA to stop the planes? You think Sean Duffy's going to stop the planes? You think Pam Bondi is going to stop the planes? There is nobody in that cabinet who stands up to him and says to him, what you are doing is insane and we have got to abide by the court order. I mean, they obviously defied the court order. They boasted about defying the court order in front of one audience, right? Tom Homan goes to Fox and says, I don't care what the court says, whatever, we're going to defy it. And then the White House cleans it up for like the rest of America. But they defied it. That's the damn truth. Well, and there's no recourse.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that they did not defy the court order, and they're saying that they will respect the courts still.
Who's
so far.
they? Did you hear Tom Homan?
Yes, but the White House has put out statements to that effect. I'm not saying that they are. I'm just saying
but they've also had to put out the timeline.
Right.
And there was a plane that took off after the court order had been issued.
Yes, I think they're saying verbal order versus written order, et cetera, et cetera. It's semantics, but
I just don't think our system was designed to deal with an executive branch that does not care
about the balance of power,
co-equal branches, and does not see them, first of all, does not see them as co-equal, does not abide by their power, does not care about the Constitution. I just think our system was not designed for that. And we certainly were not designed for having a Congress, a legislative branch that is completely beholden and kowtows to this guy.
Well, that's
there
what's
is no
different.
Accountability. There are no guardrails. The cabinet does everything he says he says, regardless of how harebrained it is. Very different from the cabinet he had term one. The Congress, the Republicans who are in charge, do everything and clap every time he says anything, regardless of how stupid it may be and how against the principles they've long held it is, right? The courts, okay, they're ruling against him, and he's not abiding by their rulings. And we don't have a mechanism to enforce it. So it's without the other two holding him accountable. If any other president did this, he'd be impeached. Legislators, the Congress would impeach him. If a president defied a court order, it is an impeachable offense, for God's sakes. But nobody in Congress will stand up. And let me just say, the thing with the Venezuelans has got me out of my mind. Because look, first, nobody that I know is against criminals, hardened criminals that are members of Tren de Aragua or of MS-13, of these horrible gangs, being sent to live under a rock. Nobody cares, right? Everybody is in agreement with that.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. Because
I don't know, because they haven't released the identities of these people, is if in fact the people they have sent to the worst hellhole in the Western Hemisphere are hardened criminals. And I do know that some of them aren't, because the administration has now said in front of the judge that many of the people that were sent don't have criminal records in the United States. And we are beginning to find out who they are because of their relatives, right? I mean, there was one guy who went with his wife to his check-in appointment with ICE. He had a pending political asylum claim, so he was here legally under a pending political asylum claim. The guy disappeared. The wife didn't know what had happened to him. And next thing you know, she sees him in that video that the president of El Salvador put out and the White House reposted. Can you imagine seeing your husband, who had shown up to an ICE appointment, who has no criminal record, being sent to that? Can you imagine the suffering, the distress? Listen, deport them. But it's all a farce, a made-for-TV farce, so that instead of talking about the 10-year-old U.S. citizen girl going through cancer treatment, who got deported out of this country along with her parents, instead of talking about the 11-year-old girl who died by suicide because she was being bullied because of her parents' immigration status, instead of talking about the professor at Brown University who's a kidney transplant specialist who's been deported, instead of talking about the price of eggs, instead of talking about capitulating to Putin, instead of talking about inflation, instead of talking about the tanking markets, instead of that, everybody's focused on this made-for-TV farce that's playing out in El Salvador. And I am incensed with Marco Rubio, because Marco Rubio knows better. When I first voted for Marco Rubio, he was an advocate for immigration reform. He was working along with people like Mel Martin, people like John McCain and others to pass immigration reform. Marco Rubio's parents came here not fleeing Castro. They came here fleeing poverty. They came before the revolution, overstayed their visas. And so the way that the Latino community is being terrorized and hunted down is frankly inhumane. And it is unacceptable and absolutely disgusting. It makes me disgusted on a daily basis that Marco Rubio, who represented an immigrant community, is out there being part of this, an active participant and accomplice in this horrible, horrible time. I'm going to tell you something. We're going to be reading about this time like we read today about the Japanese internment camps.
Yeah.
It's a dark, dark time in history. And yesterday, I was at I'll let you talk at some point.
No, there's
yesterday,
no rush.
I was at, I've been talking a lot and I've been seeing, a lot of Latino heavyweights lately. And I have said to them, we all got to lose the fear of speaking up, because we have a responsibility. Those of us who have status, those of us who have a platform, we have a responsibility to speak up for those who are being terrorized that can't speak because they are legitimately and for good reason afraid. So, at this point, fear is not an option at this point. Because the only way this changes, I have said this before, is if those cowardly Congress people are more afraid of losing their seats because the anger of the voters than they are afraid of Donald Trump.
Now, there is definite anger from some voters, and we've been seeing these town halls and talking about that constantly. I do, when I see polling, though, despite the things that you're saying, which I think are all accurate, it seems like the public is still in favor of him with his immigration plans. It's kind of staggering to me, but it does seem like it's going that way. Do you think that's not accurate, or do you think people aren't paying attention? What do you think that is?
I think it's accurate. I think people, listen, Latinos who, I keep waiting for Latinos who voted for him. A lot of them, in places like South Florida where I live, to feel some sort of remorse when you see that, these Venezuelans who are part of our community, who we know, who are our friends, are getting hunted down, when we see that our police departments in South Florida are signing cooperation agreements to be deputized as ICE. When I keep thinking, okay,
this is going to be
this is going to change the way folks, they're gleeful. Everybody I know who voted for Trump is gleeful and supportive of everything he's doing. Now, they don't read about the 10-year-old cancer victim.
Right.
And they don't read about the 11-year-old who died by suicide. And they don't read that many of these Venezuelans that have been sent to hell don't have criminal records. So they buy all that Donald Trump spews. That is the only way that you can continue supporting Donald Trump. That's part of the formula, right? You got to keep watching Fox, and you got to keep reading the blogs that they put out and reading and, consuming right-wing media so that you don't know the truth. Because I have to believe that American people are good in their hearts, and that if they knew the truth, if they wanted to know the truth, they'd have an issue with it, right? I mean, how can you be okay with innocent men whose only crime was fleeing the Maduro dictatorship and coming here to try to live in freedom, to try to have a better life for their children, and come here and work, often doing jobs that nobody else in this country wants to do? How can you be in favor of those people if they are not, and in fact some of them are not, hardened criminals and parts of this gang, being sent to this place and treated like that, shackled with their heads bent down, their heads shaved, all in front of TV, being put in, I mean, you wouldn't treat animals like this. You wouldn't treat animals like this. And we are treating human beings like this just so that Donald Trump can pretend that this entire thing he built, right? This entire theory he built, that there was an invasion by these gang members and that Venezuela had released people from prisons and insane asylums. That has never been proven. There's been no evidence of that. That is a lie. But he made all that up so that people would be afraid and go vote for him out of fear. And now he's rounding people up, some of them who we now know are not hardened criminals, so that he can prove to those people that he is delivering on his promise. It's beyond inhumane.
We've seen polling change for things like the economy. They aren't happy with what he's doing with the economy. Americans in general, I think it's gone towards negative in the recent polling. But and a few other things, and the overreach of power, maybe with the Elon Musk and all that, and the cuts. But immigration still polling positively. But I think you're right. I think people aren't either don't want to hear the stories or aren't paying attention to them. But you'll keep
These
talking.
People don't read ABC News,
right?
They read right-wing blogs,
right.
and they're applauding the fact that he's getting rid of these monsters.
And even the right-wing blogs report on the stock market going down. So maybe that's why those things are getting through. Another headline I know you really wanted to talk about was Trump's executive order closing federally funded international news outlet Voice of America. This is chilling. Explain what this is and what impact you think it's actually going to have.
Another thing I can't believe is happening with no pushback from the Cuban Americans in Congress. My entire life. Okay, so Voice of America. What is Voice of America? Voice of America is an agency. In fact, he appointed Carrie Lake, that lunatic from Arizona, to be head of it. Voice of America is an agency that broadcasts news all over the world, and it is particularly significant and to places like Cuba, to places like Nicaragua, to places in Europe that were behind the Iron Curtain, because places where there's misinformation, where there's state propaganda, where people are thirsty for real news and for truth. I have heard from so many Cubans who have been listening to radio and TV Marti. TV Marti has not been as successful because the Cubans have been very successful in jamming the signal. But Radio Marti has been incredibly successful, and something that's gone on for decades that Cuban Americans fought very hard to have established. And Cubans from the island, when they come to the United States, they talk about the significance and just kind of the hope and the message of freedom that they got from listening to Radio Marti and learning the news. He's gotten rid of all of that. And the Cuban American Republicans in Congress, crickets. Marco Rubio, who used to fight tooth and nail, crickets. I mean, it's shameful. All they do is serve as rubber stamps for Donald Trump.
I guess there's a hope there are conversations that we're not hearing behind the scenes where they're fighting for these things, because publicly challenging him doesn't tend to go very well, as we know, for the egos involved and everything else. So maybe there's a chance.
Because you think privately challenging him is different?
No, but working him over, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think what I would do in those roles. It's a tough thing to figure out.
You'd quit.
Probably.
You'd quit, or you would have never taken the role, or you would quit.
Yeah.
I mean, if not, what is the purpose? The idea that there's town halls all over the country and people aren't showing up. Last weekend, by my house, like a block from where I live. There's a church, one of these non-denominational churches, and it often serves as a venue for gatherings. And there was a town hall. There was 400, 500 people that showed up to a town hall, and they invited the Republican Congress people to come, and they didn't show up. And, it's called the House of Representatives. You are there to represent people. If you don't have the guts to face your constituents, you have no business representing your constituents. You are not representing your constituents. Right now, it should be called the House of Representatives of Donald Trump.
Yeah. All right. Let's change gears and talk about something more fun. We had some fun on the show today. Magician extraordinaire David Blaine was with us. He's still with me in many ways right now. I'm having a little tough time right now after drinking.
Please don't vomit on me.
Yeah, well, I'll try not to. I unexpectedly drank a large, ashtray. It's what it ended up being. But now, you're not a magic person generally. Were you impressed by what you saw today? It was pretty cool.
I was horrified to see you drink that. I was hoping that was some sort of trick, and it wasn't really what I thought it was. So
yeah,
so that you burnt a $100 bill. First, I'm cheap. I was horrified that you burnt $100 bill.
It was my $100 bill. I was not happy about that at all. But yeah.
Second, then you drank he poured water and you drank the ashes. I couldn't believe it.
I went for the moment.
What
did
it taste like?
Like an ashtray. It tasted exactly what you would expect it to taste like. Someone said it to me later. You ever pick up the wrong glass at a party and it was a smoker? That's basically what it tasted like watered down whiskey or bourbon, with someone smoking a lot. It was not great. And I'm feeling it. I'm paying for it a little bit right now.
It's disgusting.
I enjoy a magic trick. I have to say, I enjoy.
I know
magicians,
you do.
And
you were when you were working with Letterman, you were in charge of.
I was in charge of stupid pet tricks and things like that. But also,
and today you played the stupid pet.
I was the stupid pet. But I also I did Magicians Week at Letterman. I went to Vegas and I hung out with magicians for a couple weeks. So I saw a lot of the behind the scenes stuff. I went to David Copperfield's secret underground layer of magic. I didn't work with David Blaine at all, so it was the first time I met him, and I wasn't expecting this today. But I get a kick out of all of it.
Has he been on the show before?
Yes. Even money, you've been there with him. I'll double check. But
no memory.
Yeah, no, he's probably the biggest magician there is right now. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
What happened to the other one, David Copperfield?
He's around.
Okay.
He's around.
Magic and space are like in the same category of I don't care.
Science and everything else. Yeah.
Magic, space, and Meghan, what's her name? Markle. I don't care. I don't care. You all have at it.
This was not the show for you today, then.
No.
We touched all those things. What about, let's see, speaking of things that you do enjoy, you went to a Broadway show this week, which is not your usual hangout, but you went to see the opening of Buena Vista Social Club on Broadway, produced by Lin-Manuel Miranda and his dad, Luis, and also our guest on the show tomorrow, John Leguizamo.
I actually went, we get invited to a lot of Broadway shows because it's New York and because we're in the media, and a lot of them come and perform here. I never go because I'm never here. And I just, Broadway's not my thing. People who have been raised in New York, there's like a theater culture here that doesn't exist in many places. I didn't grow up with a theater culture. I can tell you that. But on Monday, I went to see a show that my friend LaTanya Jackson is on called Purpose.
She's coming on our show next week.
Okay. Yeah. It was extraordinary. It was, and I didn't expect to laugh, but it was really funny. And, all like a family drama, but really well done. So I went to see Purpose on Monday, which was the premiere. And then yesterday, I came back from Miami, came back a little early, and went straight to the theater, passed by Jimmy Fallon to pick up Eva Longoria, who I had, told she needed to come with me because I knew she was going to be here
And how did you find Jimmy Fallon's studio?
I texted you because I didn't know what the address was and where it was, and I What did I tell you?
You told me I'm Siri for you. It's easier to text me than to actually ask Siri a question, which was lovely.
Well, I'm on the plane. I can't ask Siri the question.
I understand. I have a life, though. I'm not necessarily waiting around for instructions from you. But
I don't give you instructions. I ask questions.
You ask questions. But also, it's one of the most famous locations in Manhattan. I mean, like it's 30 Rockefeller Plaza. It's where Saturday Night Live is. It's where all this stuff is. So anyways,
I go to the Buena Vista Social Club. And here's another interesting experience for me. I had actually been to the previews like 2 or 3 weeks ago. I had never been to the previews. I had never been to the preview of a Broadway show.
Right.
And I had never been to the previews and then the actual show.
So you see the differences.
It was so different from when I saw it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, and it was terrific then. But I noticed that it had gotten so much tighter.
Right.
And it just flowed so well. Listen, this show is it's a play with a storyline and a musical concert. And the music is fantastic. It's music that if you are, if you're Hispanic, you've grown up with these songs your entire life. But the Buena Vista Social Club, is for everyone. Listen, it's so damn good. Even the white people were dancing in the in the aisles, and it was like Latino royalty was there. So Lin-Manuel was there, and Wilmer Valderrama was there. Yep. Ruben Blades, the great Panamanian singer who I had never met, was there. Mikhail Baryshnikov, he's not Latino, but we'll take him, was there. We'll take his support. It was Ariana DeBose was there. It was just such a fun night. And then we went to a party. And, it was 2 hours of unadulterated joy. And I keep saying to people, because people come up to me all the time and ask me this question, we need to find a balance. Mm-hmm. We need to be enraged. We need to be informed. We need to be engaged. We need to be holding our representatives accountable. We need to know what is happening in America so that we can be active and engaged. But we also cannot let Donald Trump steal joy from us. And we have got to find a way of maintaining our mental balance. And for me, that comes through music, that comes through spending time with friends, that comes through, great meals. We've got to find a balance because we have got to survive the next 4 years and we've got to fight back, but we also have to fight for ourselves.
Real quick before we go, speaking of Eva Longoria, are you still recovering from her 50th birthday?
I may not recover for a year or two. This thing was ridiculous, off the charts. So, I have been talking, I think I've said it here, for months, I've been saying to Eva, what are we doing for your 50th birthday? Right. And she said nothing. I don't think she wanted to acknowledge that she was turning 50.
I understand that.
Okay. You're turning 50, aren't you?
Almost. Not yet. I'm turning 49 in August.
Okay. So I kept asking Eva, what are we doing for your birthday? What are we doing? For months I've been at this. Mm-hmm. Nothing. Shut up. Don't ask me again. I kept asking her husband, and he would say to me, she has prohibited me from organizing anything. And I would hear her say to him, you don't know how to throw a surprise party. Don't you dare throw me a surprise party. Don't you dare. Okay, so there was nothing going on. Then I find out Eva was going to be in Miami for her birthday. She wanted like a small little dinner. And I'm like, small little dinner in Miami? No such thing. I said, okay, well, why don't we invite the Miami people? And she said, okay. And so then the LA girlfriends got wind of this and they all flew in. So Friday there was a dinner in Miami, beautiful, the full moon and everything. But Becky G flew in, Jessica Alba flew in, Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade were already in Miami, so they showed up. This thing ended. So this thing ended like in the wee hours of the morning at a club. At a crazy club called Live in Miami. Then the next day, all the skinny girls, they got up to do a workout at 10 a.m.
Sure.
I was in bed. Then that night, we had a party on a yacht. And at that one, all of these people showed up. And next thing I know, there is somehow, that really tall tennis player, what's his name? The one that didn't take the vaccines? Djokovic?
Yeah, Djokovic.
Okay. Because I guess the Miami Open is going on.
Yeah.
I don't know. But all of a sudden, he's there in the middle of this party. And Mark Anthony's there. And Cha-Cha is there. And my husband's like, man, you guys are crazy. And this is going on and going on and going on. That ended also at another crazy club into the wee hours. And then the next day, we all showed up like this, just like falling off with big dark glasses to a brunch. And then we went to the reason Eva was actually in Miami, which was to promote her new movie, which I think is for Disney, actually, for Disney Plus. And it's called, what's it called? Alexander Horrible Thing?
Yeah, Alexander and the Very Bad, No Good, Horrible Day, or some version of that.
No,
it's a sequel or something.
No, it's the No Good, Horrible Road Trip.
Oh, yeah, it's a different version of it.
Right, which is coming out on Disney Plus. So that's the reason she was there. Mm-hmm. But I saw her last night here in New York. We went to this thing together. And we were talking. I mean, I think we spent the entire time talking about how you just don't recover the same.
No, that's
after
true.
a certain age.
I mean, I couldn't do anything you just said, but I found that.
By the way, this weekend I'm going to Mexico to see Shakira.
You have an incredible amount of stamina still. I after I turned 30, I lost the ability to start recovering. 40 was even worse. Like a long plane. I mean, you're the queen of air travel, but for me, a red eye will take me out for 2 weeks. I can't do it.
So, what's the latest you go out? And if you drink and go out late?
Late for me would be like 1 a.m. That's
for
it
the
for me.
love of
Yeah,
God.
no, I'm old.
Oh, we're still having breakfast by then.
I know.
1 a.m.?
Yeah, and I'm going to sleep now at like 9, 10 o'clock at night now. I'm going up to bed.
Well, I will tell you, Eva usually goes to sleep very early, like at midnight. Like by 10 o'clock, that woman turns into a pumpkin. Mm-hmm. But man, the pumpkin lost the address this weekend. We were like, we literally were like if we were college girls. We were Latinas gone wild.
All right, there we go.
We were this weekend.
Well, there's a good title for today's podcast, Latinas Gone Wild. No, we're not going to do that. All right.
I love it. Why not?
Yeah, we'll find out. Okay, here we go. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Road Trip. That's the title. You're correct.
And you know who I met?
Who
was there to promote it with her, who's in the movie and who I had never met before. And to me, he's kind of like an icon, and it made me feel so happy. Cheech Marin.
Oh, he's coming on the show soon.
I
Cheech
love
and
him.
Chong are coming on together. I'm very excited. Yes. Whoopi and Cheech are close because they were both hyenas in the Lion King. So
that's right.
That's right. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Anna. We ran the gamut. We got rage, righteous anger. We had fun. We had all the stuff. All right. Anna, Behind the Table is back on Monday, but tomorrow we have an all new episode of The View with John Leguizamo, among other things.
Also a producer of the Buena Vista Social Club.
I'm sure we'll be talking about it, and we'll see you then.